Jarrolds celebrated its 250th year in 2020, sadly in a time of pandemic and lockdowns. So it's now 252 years since Jarrolds began, initially as a grocers and drapers in the marketplace at Woodbridge in Suffolk under the first John Jarrold. When he died in 1775, his widow took her family to Norwich, and in 1823 his son, also John, set up as a bookseller, publisher and printer at number 3 Cocky Lane, then the name for London Street. The business stayed there until moving opposite to the current site in 1840, gradually acquiring the remainder of the current site up to 2004, this being the final piece of the jigsaw. New printing works were built in Little London Street about 1860, and one of the most famous children's books of all time, Black Beauty, was printed by Jarrolds in 1878. This picture was commissioned by Jarrolds for a 1912 edition of the book. By the early 20th century, Jarrold had developed into a substantial retail business with branches in Cromer, shown here, Yarmouth, shown here, Sheringham and Lowestoft. The printing side of the business moved to St James's Mill in 1902, at one stage employing 1,500 people. Back to the London Street store, look at the excitement as Father Christmas arrives. Jarrolds had its own library on the second floor, which enabled its users to enjoy the latest fiction for 14 shillings and sixpence a year. George Skipper, a famous Norwich architect, had designed the building as seen here in 1903 and here in 1909. He remodelled the Exchange Street and London Street corner in 1923, and it is seen here for the Queen's coronation in 1953. Between the wars, the store had been rebuilt with the addition of Jarrolds' first restaurant. In an era of letter writing, Jarrolds' stationery department was well stocked. They manufactured stationery on a large scale for forces during the war. The Second World War caused havoc, and Curl's department store, later Debenhams, was destroyed as seen here. It was temporarily housed on a floor of Jarrolds after this. Pictures of war damage were published by Jarrolds in this book of photos by George Swain. This is Jarrolds' first floor in 1955. 9 years later, in 1964, Jarrolds purchased the adjacent Corn Hall on the Exchange Street and Bedford Street corner, enabling great expansion of the retail premises. A blue plaque marks the spot. A fashion floor opened in 1965, including the glamorous Eye-Catcher boutique, and a record department opened the following year. 1970 was a big year for Jarrolds as it achieved 200 years of trading, and John Jarrold was appointed Lord Mayor of Norwich. More changes to the Norwich store occurred in the 1980s, and a branch was established in Wyndham when Jarrolds took over Jackson's. In 2004, these former neighbouring shops were acquired, and Jarrolds finally owned the entire block. Further developments have included the acquisition, relocation and expansion of the long-standing Pilch sports store, seen here advertising in a 1935 Norwich City Football Club programme. It's now known as Jarrold Intersport. The Intersport store also incorporates the NCFC fan hub. Jarrolds also developed the granary in Bedford Street, and they also run the refectory restaurant at Norwich Cathedral. Additionally, Jarrolds sponsored a stand at Carrow Road from 2004 to 2016 and commissioned the Jarrold Bridge, shaped as a J in an elegant arc built to link the city more closely to Mousehold Heath and the new developments beside the river. It is one of the few remaining independently run department stores in the UK, and while it marked its 250th anniversary in 2020, it will celebrate 200 years in Norwich in 2023. This book tells its story. Let's conclude this video with other scenes from Jarrolds' history.